Welcome to the Explainer. You know, we get this question all the time from Aussie investors. How can a big group, maybe a bunch of friends or family, legally pool their superannuation to buy a property? It sounds like it should be simple, right? But as you'll see, the law has a few things to say about that.
So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll look at the big legal hurdle that trips most groups up. Then we'll get into the really clever two-part structure that makes this possible. We'll also walk through how the actual purchase goes down, and then wrap up with the big stuff, the benefits, the risks, and whether it's all worth it. All right, let's get right into it. So picture this. You and, say, 12 of your mates or family members. You've all decided you want to team up. You want to buy a property with your super. Could be a commercial building, maybe a nice holiday house for a long-term investment. The point is, you've got the group and you've all got the cash ready to go in your super funds. So what's the problem? I mean, you've got the people, you've got the money. What's stopping you? Well, this is where Australian superannuation law throws up a big, immediate roadblock. There's one very specific rule that gets in the way for a group this size. And here it is, the problem in a nutshell. Your goal, 13 investors, 1 property. The rule, a single self-managed super fund, an SMSF, can only have a maximum of 6 members. That's the law. So you see the issue, right? You can't just lump everyone into one big fund. This is where you have to get a bit creative. But, and this is key, you have to stay 100% compliant. So how do you solve this? How do you get around that 6-member limit? Well, the answer is actually pretty elegant. It's a 2-part structure that works around the rule without ever breaking it. It involves using 2 different legal tools that, when you put them together, work in perfect harmony. Okay, so piece number 1 of the puzzle is the self-managed super fund, the SMSF. Now, instead of trying to create one big illegal fund for all 13 people, the group just splits up. You form multiple, smaller, legal SMSFs. So for our group of 13, that might look like 2 funds with 6 people each, and then maybe one person sets up their own. The important thing is, each one of these is its own separate, fully regulated fund. Now, for the second piece of this strategy, and honestly, this is the really critical part. It's called a unit trust. The best way to think about it is like a central piggy bank. It's a special purpose container, a separate legal vehicle that's set up to do just one thing: hold the asset, the property, on behalf of all the different investors. Okay, so let's see how these 2 things click together. It's a really neat process. First, you set up all your small compliant SMSFs. Step 2, you create that central unit trust, the piggy bank. Then each of those SMSFs takes its cash and invests it into the unit trust. In return, they get units, which are basically just like shares that represent their ownership stake. And then, for the final step, the unit trust takes all that pooled money and buys the property. Outright. Cash. The trust holds the title, but it's doing it on behalf of everyone. Right, so now that we've got the basic structure down, let's do a quick flyover of the actual process. You know, what are the key phases from the very beginning all the way to getting the keys to the property? Okay, this whole journey really breaks down into 4 main phases. First up, you have the setup. Every single one of those SMSFs has to be properly established, registered with the ATO, and then funded when the members roll their super over. Then phase 2, you create the unit trust and all the SMSFs transfer their cash over to buy their units. And it's only then, in phase 3, once the trust is fully funded, that it can actually go property hunting. The final step, that's settlement, when the unit trust officially becomes the legal owner. Okay, listen up, because this next part is the golden rule. It's non-negotiable. The whole strategy only works if the unit trust is what's called non-geared. Now, that's the technical term, but it means something very, very simple. The trust cannot borrow money. Period. No loans. The property has to be bought with 100% cash that's come from the SMSFs. No mortgages, no borrowing whatsoever. This is the absolute key to keeping the whole thing compliant. All right, so now for what is probably the most important question of all. Why on earth would you go through all this hassle? What's the payoff? And on the flip side, what are the really big risks you have to watch out for to make sure this whole thing doesn't go sideways? The number one reason, it's all about tax. It's a huge advantage. See, any money the property makes, like rental income or capital gains when you sell, it flows from the unit trust back to each SMSF. And inside the SMSF, that income is taxed at the super rate of just 15%. Now compare that to your personal tax rate, which can be up to 45%. And it gets even better. If a member is retired and in the pension phase, that tax rate can actually drop to 0. We're talking about a massive, massive difference. But there's always a but. There's a trade-off. First, property is an illiquid asset. You can't just sell it tomorrow if you need cash. Second, the compliance workload is huge. And remember, it's not just one audit. Every single one of your SMSFs needs its own separate audit every single year. And then there's the people part. Trying to get 13 or more people to agree on things, you need rock-solid, ironclad agreements from day one. This is absolutely 100% not a do-it-yourself job.
And this is a really serious warning you have to take to heart. A single misstep, even something that seems small, like the trust taking out a tiny loan for a quick renovation, that one thing can permanently taint the entire structure. The ATO will see it as a breach, and that one mistake can set off a chain reaction of compliance nightmares and tax penalties for every single person involved. So having strong rules and governance, it's not just a nice to have, it is absolutely essential. So at the end of the day, this strategy, it's a powerful tool, no doubt about it. It lets a group get into bigger property deals and unlock some serious tax benefits that you just couldn't get on your own. But, and it's a big but, it demands incredibly detailed planning, total discipline from every single person in the group, and professional expert help right from the very beginning. So it really leaves you with one final crucial question to ask yourselves. Is the big collective reward really worth all of that complexity?